In 2021, Spotify maintains its position as the world's largest music streaming service. The company continues to grow at phenomenal rates and currently has 165 million paid users, almost double of what it had 3 years ago. But Spotify still faces severe competition over each customer from cash-rich competitors such as Apple Music, Amazon Music, YouTube Music, etc. Even then, the company's current environment is actually far more ideal than the one it was launched in. The company was formed in 2006, and back then it had no other major competitors, for a reason. In the 2000s, where the internet had just been launched a few years ago, and piracy and sharing of music files was the norm, where users downloaded songs free of cost and everything was available online. In such an environment, Spotify had to convince people to actually pay for listening to music. And unlike its current competitors, Spotify did not have any cash-rich parent companies to help them out. To survive in such an environment, Spotify would need nothing less than complete disruption of the industry and changing the way it worked. So how was Spotify able to rise to its success? And what are the business lessons that we can learn from it? The global music industry had seen tremendous growth in the 80s and 90s, but was completely thwarted by the introduction of the internet. The internet allowed large-scale file sharing and facilitated online piracy and illegal sharing of music. Napster, which was one of the first websites to do so, was eventually shut down due to huge lawsuits by record labels. But downloading music for free had become the norm, and even through lawsuits, it was impossible to completely abolish online piracy. Seeing all this, Apple had been the first company that tried to legitimize downloading of music. It introduced the iTunes Store in 2002, which allowed consumers to download songs for 99 cents each. However, iTunes was restricted to only Apple users, and many consumers were still unwilling to pay for something that could, even though illegally, be obtained for free. The music industry was in a constant decline as sales kept plunging down and piracy of music kept going up. But even amidst this chaos, in 2006, Daniel Ek and Martin Lorentzen saw an opportunity. What Daniel and Martin realized was that even with constant advancements in technology, it was quite cumbersome to obtain music. Songs could be obtained legally or illegally. If a consumer wanted to obtain music legally, they would need to find valid websites, find the song that they want, and pay for each one separately. And if a consumer wanted to obtain music illegally, they would need to surf the internet looking for websites supporting piracy, find the right music file, and go through all the ads while running the risk of accidentally installing or downloading any malware, which was extremely popular back then. Initially, Daniel and Martin explored the idea of developing a peer-to-peer music sharing service like Napster, as according to a study in 2006, 95% of all music was being downloaded illegally. But it quickly became apparent that piracy had limitations beyond its illegality. It took several minutes to download a single song. The audio quality of pirated tracks varied wildly. Even popular torrents were infested with viruses and malware. This is when Daniel and Martin saw a market for an online music streaming service. They planned to create a product so good that users would happily pay $10 per month, even though they could easily download torrents of their favorite music for free. They wanted to create a seamless and quality listening experience for their users. Daniel studied that anything less than 250 milliseconds was considered instant by the human brain. This is what he aimed for, and to do this, he had to invest heavily in engineering to make the application lightweight, as the internet wasn't as advanced as it is today. Providing a seamless experience was more about survival than success for Spotify, as they knew that if their service wasn't fast enough, users would readily go back to piracy or buying of songs that were much more instant. The next thing that Spotify had to do was to enter into licensing agreements with the record label companies. They wanted to create a contract where, instead of paying royalties on the number of downloads, they were paid based on the number of times a song was played. And their timing couldn't have been better. The music industry's revenue had been steadily declining and showed no sign of slowing down. With sales dwindling and few ideas on how to stop it, all major record labels, and a couple of smaller labels, agreed to make their entire back catalogues available to Daniel and his company. Daniel and Martin also knew that they couldn't simply get users by introducing a paid streaming plan. Consumers were too accustomed to obtaining music for free that convincing them to pay for listening to music directly was too much of an ask. This was when Spotify decided to employ a freemium strategy. In accordance with the freemium strategy, Spotify offered both free and premium services to consumers. The free services were to be supported by ads, and the premium service consisted of a monthly plan. The free service also had other restrictions, such as a song could only be replayed 5 times, and users were only allowed a limited number of hours of streaming for each month. What Spotify hoped to do with this strategy was gain a large number of free users, get them used to the service, show them the ease with which they could access music, and eventually convince them to shift to the premium models, to remove restrictions and advertisements. After all this came together, and a lot of prototypes and beta testing, Spotify was eventually launched in 2008, and it has never looked back. The efforts of Daniel and Martin not only helped create a successful company, but completely revolutionized the music industry.